right, I'm pushing the button. All right, the button has been pushed. I think we are live. Man, Tony, please don't let us forget about that. We should just talk about that straight away. Like, we'll do all this intro stuff, but then we'll start talking about what you were just talking about because it's good stuff.
We were on a roll, folks, so let's get going.
We're on a roll. Yeah. We have so much fun talking about stuff like before we go live. Like we need to go live and we need to do like a pre-show and then go live. But then that would just be a longer version of the show. Anyway, a mysterious
exclusive for our Obi fans.
Ooh. Yes, we do have an Obi fans account too. So yeah, it's onlyfans.com/circle of nerds, I believe. So there's absolutely no content there. But yeah, we have one. Everybody's got an OnlyFans, right? Everybody has. We should do like Star Wars type content. Not like nudie type stuff. Just like more adult. I bet we get pretty adult on our show anyway, right?
I guess Louis was good at that.
Louis was very good at that. We need to get Louis back on the show. All right, coming up this week, a mysterious Indiana Jones cult, a Jedi Master perpetuating negative stereotypes, and did Jar Jar Binks just get some booty? It's the Clone Wars Season 6, Episodes 8, 9, and 10 this week on your Star Wars Safe Space. Please stick around. Love it. Hey there, Star Warriors. Welcome to Star Wars Safe Space, your non-toxic low-sodium Star Wars show that doesn't make you feel bad for not knowing that Ahmad Best did the voice and motion capture for Jar Jar Binks and also performed all of Jar Jar Binks' physical stunts and choreography, even for the animated series. Ahmad Best is awesome. He is the best. We need to get him on the show. So whether you're a hardcore fan or just a little Swarzy curious, this is your Star Wars Safe Space. We are the Circle of Nerds, and we do absolutely love Star Wars, even if we don't always like it. So let's go around and meet the crew, shall we? Hailing from parts unknown, it is T to the Oni.
Welcome back to the galaxy, everybody. Another fun arc. Let's get at it.
Yeah. And captain of the infamous Parma Flyer, it's Crash.
Hey, everybody. We got a good one tonight, so lock those ass foils in. Let's do it.
All right. Good to have you guys on deck this week. So what are we doing here? Well, our mission is to watch all of the canon Star Wars films and TV shows in chronological order, breaking them down, connecting the dots, and learning more about Star Wars and maybe even a little bit about ourselves along the way. Now, would be warning to all you Star Warriors out there, there are going to be some spoilers. So be prepared. No RIPs this week. A couple of cult members bit the big one, but
screw those members.
Yeah, screw those guys. So we're gonna dive into we've got the Jar Jar arc, and then we've got this one-off story dealing with Sifo Dyas. I wish we would have got more with that because that was pretty interesting. So we're gonna hop around a little bit. Tony, you brought up something very interesting before we got on the show today.
Yeah. So it was brought to my attention in a meme that has been posted to our little Swarzy Curious group. I found it on Instagram, and unfortunately, I don't have it in front of me, so I can't give credit to the originator. But I'll see if I can't find that later. But this person will just basically point out that after Order 66, we find out that the Jedi have access to a hologram recording of the inside of Palpatine's office, presumably at all times, because we can see, the aftermath of his turning of Anakin.
Right.
But if the Jedi have access to that, presumably anytime they want, how the hell did Palpatine get away with everything that he's been doing this whole time? Because maybe he's going someplace else to do things, but even if he's not a Sith Lord, he's a politician. You don't have too many private moments, and you think your office is one of the few private areas that you have. So if he's conducting that kind of business, some of it's going to be being done from there.
Now he's going to the bathroom. I'm telling you, he's got his refresher. He's got an ensuite, of course. So it's right off the office. He's got his Sith robes hanging up in there because he always puts them on before he makes a collect call. So, and it wouldn't look out of place. Like if you were to go into Palpatine's refresher and you saw some robes hanging there, you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe he just, that's his dressing gown or something. So
I will say, if that's the case, I would find it hilarious that, if there was a blooper somewhere of him on a call with Dooku, and you hear a toilet flush in the background. Like, are you calling me from the cannon? What the fuck?
That would be hilarious. Like Dooku would be like, "My master, why are you sitting down? Don't worry about me. Worry about your own treachery."
Robot Chicken, you're on line 5.
Go for Papa Palpatine. I don't know. He's going elsewhere. But Crash, you brought up a good point too. I mean, like,
well, yeah.
As soon as Yoda left, he was like, he had Dooku on speed dial. He was like, "Lord Tyrannus, you fucked up again."
Well, and with the scene that Tony's talking about is the clip from the Revenge of the Sith where Obi-Wan's watching a hologram of Palpatine in Lord Sidious gear with talking to now Lord Vader.
Right.
And I saw that meme, and my first thought was I didn't think that was necessarily at his office. My thought was always, sure, he sent Anakin and the 501st in to execute Order 66 and the Jedi at the temple. I always figured that recording came after the fact. He shows up in the books and the comic lore. They've sort of implied that Palpatine repurposes the Jedi Temple, because you see it in the special edition in the background, that it was sort of like conquering the enemy's home and making it sort of becomes the Imperial Palace officially.
Yeah.
So that image I always figured was sort of after the slaughter, him showing up and sort of reveling in his victory. So it wasn't necessarily in his chancellor's office where we see him knighting Anakin as a Sith. It was afterwards at the Jedi Temple. He showed up to gloat,
knowing full well that there were holo cameras in there.
Oh yeah,
capturing everything. So he did that shit. He doesn't do anything by accident.
No, and that's exactly it. I think he was, he said he shows up after the slaughter. He's like, this is my house now.
Yeah.
And, Obi-Wan and Yoda just came back and, recorded the playback.
Right. So, well, I mean, Tony, what do you think? I mean, you saw that. I mean, what do you think?
That is I hadn't considered that aspect, and that's entirely possible. I feel like that would take longer than would have been reasonable within that amount of time. Like, I don't think that's 1 minute it's the Jedi Temple, the next minute it has completely fallen, and Dooku's Palpatine's giving it a Empire makeover. Like, I mean, Anakin gets slaughtered the younglings pretty quickly, but there's still all the temple guards. There's still you're not just doing that in a minute.
Well, by the time Obi-Wan and Yoda get back to the temple, I always figured a couple days had passed. They had to put the fires out. We've seen in the movie, there's smoke coming out of the temple. So I think a couple days had passed. I think enough time for fire crews and cleanup. I'm sure they mopped up the bodies, as it were.
Yeah.
But just the idea that, I can see Palpatine strutting through the Jedi Temple going,
this is my house.
Mine.
This is my house now.
Yeah.
I just, and you said cleaning up, the bodies or whatever. I just, like, when you said that, the first thing I pictured were a bunch of clone troopers with like push brooms just cleaning up the younglings' bodies, just like pushing them around. Or droids. I would imagine droids probably went in there and cleaned up.
Probably droids.
The body.
I never understood. There's certain people that we live in a sick world. I guess that there's a video around, somebody was in the Revenge of the Sith re-release.
Yeah.
And somebody was recording in the theater, the scene when Master Skywalker, what do we do? There were people cheering when he lights that saber up. And it's like, it just gives you the creeps, because you're like, oh my, I even said when Obi-Wan Kenobi, the opening scene, they show Dave Filoni has a thing where anything Jedi related has to have an Order 66 flashback, and in Obi-Wan Kenobi series, the beginning, it wasn't just a invasion of an army, but it was a school shooting, and it's just like it showed how brutal and traumatizing it was for not just the ones that survived, but I mean those poor kids that were just this was their life, and all of a sudden these soldiers showed up and slaughtered them.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, American audiences now are pretty desensitized to
Everything.
school shootings. So
everything. I don't know, like I mean, not to go off topic, but to go off topic, the Final Destination movies, that kind of stuff, that basically like torture porn, what is it, the human centipede, all that nonsense, and it's just like I like horror movies as much as the next guy. I really do. I like horror movies a lot, but some like Final Destination, Human Centipede, Saw, things like that, those aren't horror films to me. It's just it's just straight up horror and murder porn. Like, I'm not saying that Freddy and Jason and Mike Myers aren't cold-blooded killers too, but it's just I don't know. It's like and killing children, I just can't abide that like at all. Like I grew up idolizing Darth Vader. I really did. I mean, you guys, I told you the story. Darth Vader scared the shit out of my asshole brother. My asshole brother was a bully, and now Darth Vader scares the shit out of my that's my hero. Explains my interest in leather pants as well, I guess. But then I saw the prequels, and I was like, oh man, that's not my Darth Vader, really. I mean, my Darth Vader is a tortured soul who did the wrong things for the right reason. He did this to save his wife and his children, and okay, I can, that deserves a redemption arc. But man, you didn't have to kill the kiddos, even the kids, even the Tusken kids.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have to kill them. And then Book of Boba Fett comes along and makes us actually
you start to love the Tuskens because they're not just mindless, warriors in the desert. These people had a culture.
They're just
they were savages. They were just, this was their land, and the people who come to Tatooine just didn't see them as equals.
Yeah, they were an indigenous culture just trying to live their best life. Kind of familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of parallels to some other things going on, but yeah, that was it. So yeah, I can't abide Anakin or Darth Vader anymore. It's like, oh man, like even in these episodes, we saw Anakin was getting upset, wanting to get information out of the Pike Chancellor, and Obi-Wan gave him this look, like, ooh, my guy, dial it back a bit. I mean, it's like they're starting to set. They have to start being able to sense this. But like we talked about last week, they can't afford to let him go.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do anything with Anakin, right now. But we're gonna get to that. Jar Jar Binks. Let's talk about this arc, shall we?
The lover, not the fighter.
The lover, not the fighter. So Jar Jar Binks, accidental action hero, or still a hidden Sith Lord. So are we seeing like a reframing of the character to kind of pull him away from his overly comedic roots, or is he still just that comic relief, but now he's in mature situations? He actually he nutted up, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely showed an amount of bravery in these episodes that we don't see very often from him. But it's more so just the character maturity in that it's not a one note. Like for so much of the time, he's very much been just the comic relief, or the guy who, oh hey, we need a familiar character, just throw him in here, and he's not going to do anything, but he'll just be there. But to actually see him have a romantic story arc, have a history that we're not familiar with the Queen there. It's interesting. It gives the character more depth.
Yeah.
And we were talking before the show. I loved these 2 episodes because it really reminded me of those old Bing Crosby, Bob Hope movies, where this odd couple go on an adventure, and it's the funny one, the screwball one that gets the girl.
Always.
And it's like, I was watching it, I'm just like, you sneaky little gungan, because again, Star Wars has a way of we create different societies, all these alien cultures. They're supposed to be reminiscent of something. If at face value, a planet of very Eastern Oriental space ducks or geese or whatever the analogy you'd use for form, would be a comical thing. But when you realize that Jar Jar, who is also viewed as a comical creature, could relate to them, can understand their, I loved how even the Jedi admitted their society is a different, they see a different version of what the Force is.
Yeah.
It's all part of the same pot. I'm a very untraditional Catholic, and that I'd like to see what other religions and cultures have in common, as opposed to there's my camp and your camp.
Right.
I like that the Jedi respect these people, even though they don't trust the Jedi. The whole they thought they accused the Jedi of stealing their children, which we've talked about on the show. I know some people are a little harder on the Jedi for that than I am, but I was like, okay, they understand why the mistrust is there. They understand these people have a very spiritual mentality to them, and they believe in omens and all these kind of things. Just the idea that Mace Windu came even though he wasn't invited was a sign of calamity. It's like it was great watching Mace be a little sneaky and let Jar Jar take the lead.
A little sneaky. He completely abused his powers and authority. He, for someone who is like such a stickler for the rules, as we saw when he was a younger Jedi during Tales, stickler, 100% by the book, and now here he is trying to cockblock Jar Jar, trying to mind trick the guards, and then very deceptively luring them away.
Yeah, that was a little.
Come on, Mace. You are perpetuating those. You're giving them more ammunition. You're not making your case for the Jedi at all. You're being very
funny how much he was hurting the cause with that. It's almost as if his pride couldn't take the hit of being the second fiddle in this.
Being Jar Jar's servant.
Yeah.
Yeah, he couldn't take that. But I still maintain, especially after this arc, Jar Jar is one with the Force. He and the Force is, he's with the Force and the Force is with him. I mean, because there's no other explanation for his survival and the fact that he doesn't get hurt, and he still continues. And I think he sauced some people this episode or this week. When he got a hold of the Stone Guardians blasters.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
I think it looked like he got like a 4-piece and a biscuit combo. He took out a few guys, and he was like, like, okay, you just murked like 4 people, Jar Jar.
He's got a very Jackie Chan style of fighting.
Drunk monkey. Yeah.
Yeah. Where it's like it looks kind of ridiculous, but it works, and you go, okay, I'm sure it worked in your head, so go for it, brother. And going back to Mace Windu, even with the Jedi Council, when they were trying to decide who was going to go on this mission, it was just that little bit of sneakiness, or Mace kind of put the emphasis on, well, if the Council decides that I should go, like he already had it in his mind that it was going to be him. He just sort of had to play the room and to make everybody feel like this was a consensus decision.
Why do you think that he wanted to go? Do you think it was an ego thing because they don't like Jedi and they don't want Jedi involved, and Jar Jar can't go by himself because he'll fuck it up? That?
I think there was a little bit of, again, snottiness to him where he feels that the Jedi are so above everything that this silly Gungan representative would botch the mission, but also this planet, he probably thought they're a bit of mystical rubes, like, oh, they believe in life spirits and stuff, but all these things that are similar to the Force, but they view it a different way. I think there was a little arrogance to Mace Windu in that he thinks he's smarter than everybody in the room.
It's not even. I don't even think it's just Mace. It's the Jedi Order. It is their ignorance and arrogance, and we've talked about this before many times, that got them trapped. And Yoda said it. He said a Sith Lord spun this web, and he said we're in it, and we're gonna have to play his game for now, because he did a very un-Jedi like thing, and so we're gonna do a cover up. Mm-hmm. No one can know about this with Sifo Dyas. No one can,
And Yoda, it wasn't so much that, at least I think, Yoda wasn't worried. The Jedi Orders had scandals. We now that we've seen the Acolyte, we know that people have done shady things in the name of the Jedi before. But it was like he was more concerned about the public's perception of the clones. If it was found out that the clone army was ordered by the people who are the enemy of us, no one would trust the clone army, because they would assume there's an ulterior motive to having both sides.
And there is.
But it was interesting that Yoda wasn't saying, well, we got to protect ourselves and the image of the Jedi Order. It was we have to keep this quiet because it would decimate the clone army, the confidence in the clone army.
Sure. But just masterfully played by Palpatine. He knew the Jedi's weakness. He knew that they have this arrogance, and this arrogance does give them blind spots and keeps them ignorant. And he just fucking played them like a fiddle at every move. This week, this thing with that aide, that loose end that didn't get tied up initially, that was off Palpatine's radar because he trusted Dooku to get the job done. But aside from that, Dooku doesn't miss much. I mean, Palpatine doesn't miss much.
No. But I'm sorry, but I know it's not just, but we just had this whole arc with Fives.
Yeah.
Where now we know, and presumably at least some Jedi know that these clones aren't just straight clones, that they have a built-in control device.
Right.
Granted, they don't know exactly what it does, but they know that it's there. Now you know specifically that this army was created by your enemy. And you didn't think, you couldn't figure out that Order 66 was coming?
Well, and like they had said, you're absolutely right. But, they even said that Sifo Dyas saw this happening. And he said, we need this army. And they shot him down. They said, nah. Again, it's it's an almost willful ignorance. Like when he disappeared, I mean, why didn't they really put more effort into trying to track him down? I mean, now we're like 10 plus years after the fact. Now they want to start trying to piece these puzzle, this puzzle together. I mean, had they tried to track down Sifo Dyas when he first went missing, it's entirely possible the Clone Wars never would have happened, because they would have been connecting the dots then.
I will say it was nice to see Valorum. I had always kind of had a headcanon that Palpatine had him iced off camera because, as his at one point rival, get rid of a loose end because you never know if he's going to start digging. So it was nice to kind of see that he wasn't a victim. Well, I mean, any more than he already was.
They actually did in the old canon comics. There was an arc where basically Valorum, it was expressly said, but Valorum's on a shuttle that explodes. And it was sort of implied that Palpatine was silencing anyone who would know how the inside, because like in this episode, it was Valorum who sent Sifo Dyas, to deal with
criminal activity, with
yeah.
with syndicate activity.
I mean, and the Jedi Order doesn't even know that there was another Jedi with him, because the official report about what happened basically probably said Sifo Dyas was at Obadiah with the Pikes, and the ship disappeared. That's why when they came across it in that wasteland, they were surprised. They weren't expecting to find it there.
No, and we still never find out who the second Jedi was.
I'm assuming it was Dooku.
I think so too.
You have to think so.
Like, it's just the kind of thing where Dooku was doing the biggest identity theft of all time, where he basically kills the guy, takes his ID, and orders a clone army on his credit card.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. But the Jedi's arrogance, it creates this blind spot for them.
It does, and we've seen that in other stories too. Again, Acolyte's a great example.
Mm-hmm.
Acolyte is a great example of that. You're absolutely right.
And this right here, like, I know I said it once before, and I got a little bit of flack for it, but I think a couple of our fans have agreed with me. This is why I'm not a fan of Mace's character.
I've never liked Mace. I mean, I like the idea of Mace Windu. I love Samuel L. Jackson playing Mace Windu. I think that's very cool. But it's just like the character. The only time I've liked Mace was in the micro series. He was in one episode. He was a complete and total fucking badass. And you know what? And in these two episodes, he used the Force more in these two episodes than I have seen anyone use the Force in the entire fucking series. I mean, he was using the Force the way that I always thought a Jedi should. He's pushing, he's pulling, he's lifting people up, he's making sure people don't drop. Like in the Clovis arc, Anakin's hanging on to Clovis and Padme. Why couldn't he just use the Force to lift him up?
Well, short answer for Anakin is he doesn't want Clovis to live.
Well, yeah, there's that. But I mean, even with Padme, he could have fucking like, he could have lifted Padme up and then used both hands to. And he has a cybernetic arm, which gives him some extra strength.
Yes,
but they just refuse to use the Force, except Mace. Mace was doing fucking Force parkour all over the city.
I wonder if Anakin's affection for Padme, he's unbalanced when he's around her. I wonder if I was thinking that too in the last episode when we were watching, because it's the classic Ahsoka thing with the Steel Guerrero. Like people are like, well, why didn't she pull her up with the Force? Well, she was trying and she got shot in the shoulder. Her focus was distracted. I think Anakin in a crisis like that with Padme, he's not thinking like a Jedi. He's thinking like a husband. Whereas Mace is just, this is the lightsaber. It says bad motherfucker. There are two Mace Windus in my mind. There's the people love Sam Jackson as a Jedi because they expect him to drop an MF bomb every 5
Right. The first F bomb in Star Wars is going to have to come from Sam.
Right. And then there is the actual Clone Wars and micro series animated, everything else that Mace Windu has been in without Sam Jackson. There's in a way there's sort of two different characters because Sam Jackson, we all know Sam Jackson got the part because he's a Star Wars fan and he wanted to be in the movie. And people like to always cite, when they say that, like when John Boyega was talking about the racism in the fandom, it's like, well, what about Lando Calrissian and Mace Windu? Congratulations, you named the two only major name black characters in the whole saga up until the sequel trilogy, which sort of proves the point.
Right.
And it was mostly when the prequels came out, it was mostly accepted because it was a big name star like Sam Jackson. If it had been a nobody, they'd have thought, who the F is this guy?
Like if it would have been Ahmad Best,
as
a Jedi, how would that have gone? So
it'd have been like, who's this guy? How is he? Why is he equal to Yoda? Blah blah blah.
Right. So all right, let me ask you this: since we're talking about Mace, do we think that Mace is coming back? Do we think that he will make a return? There's rumors. There's always been rumors swirling around. Samuel L. Jackson himself has posted a couple of times saying that Mace Windu's not dead. He's like, I'm not dead yet. Mace is not dead. He did a video with his lightsaber once. So is Mace coming back? Could Mace come back? We never saw a body, and we know how it is. I mean, shit, you can get cut in half, you can get stabbed in the stomach, You could
get
fall,
thrown down a reactor shaft.
get thrown down a reactor shaft and somehow return. So, death is just a polite suggestion in Star Wars. It's, if I need to see a body. I need to see Obi-Wan's empty cloak, and I need to, stomp on it with my foot so I can make sure that motherfucker is actually dead. So is Mace chilling down in like level 1313 somewhere, just like biding his time, getting his strength back? Is he coming back? Could he come back?
So here's the thing. I would love to see if they did a limited series or whatever with him and having that redemption arc after losing to Palpatine. I would be all for it. I'm a little bit concerned. I know we've had this conversation once before, but it was a while back. If you've seen the Captain Marvel movie and you see the de-aging that they did on Samuel L. Jackson to play Nick Fury, but like anytime he had to do anything action-wise, it was very obvious that he's an old man.
Right.
And that's going to be exponentially worse now than it was then. And the longer that it takes to do this, the worse it's going to get.
It would fit though. Like
it would, but the thing that, like, if I were to see this type of series, I'd want to see badass Mace Windu.
You don't want to see old man Mace Windu.
I mean, if he's going to have a redemption arc, I think he needs to be the badass. I don't think he can be a hermit like Obi-Wan became. And I just don't know that would work. And the other thing is, given how much we know at this point of the story, like, what's he gonna do? Like, what is his role in fixing the problem that he helped create? Because, like, I mean, if he had a bit role in Andor or something like that, and it was I've got, somebody on the inside in Coruscant, and that's working, working undercover, helping me out. Like, that could have been cool, but I just don't see that. I just don't know that it can work. I don't know what role you can give him that would justify bringing him back.
Maybe just survival. So Granny said Mace Windu with nerve damage. He did a lot of nerve damage. Maybe it's just survival. Maybe it's, he's, do we put him like in the Mandoverse era? Do we put him in New Order era? Where I think in New Order he'd be way, way too long in the tooth for that. Yeah, but I think he could fit in the Mandoverse. I think he could fit in that timeline. What is that, like 5-ish years, 5 to 9 years after
Jedi?
After Jedi, yeah. I think Mace could work there.
I'm going to go a different route and sort of play this from a real world angle, in that, like Tony said, a lot of it would depend on what the story of him is about. If it's just a straight up redemption arc, if it's just fan service, I don't know. Because the problem is, now that Bob Iger's all but killed, is that what the rumor is? He's told Tony Gilroy from Andor that streaming is dead, meaning they're pulling all their money from streaming shows and they're focusing on movies. I don't know. And the irony of that is, the reason streaming's hurting is because Bob Iger, Disney, and Kathleen Kennedy through Lucasfilm gave Tony Gilroy anything he wanted to make 3-4 movies worth of Andor and call it 2 seasons with like long story arcs. I mean, you look at we talk about this all the time. You look at the runtimes of Andor, and if you splice those together, you've got a trilogy of movies at best.
You do.
And
they're as expensive.
And they're just as expensive. That's, people like to complain that The Acolyte was a big budget failure. Yeah, you wanted a big budget movie of movie quality sets, costumes, set of Star Wars level, but you wanted it to be on a TV budget, and that just doesn't happen. I think the problem with doing a Mace Windu movie is how much of the pie does other projects lose?
Right.
Ryan Gosling was, getting a Starfighter movie. We're still trying to get Daisy Ridley back with the, new Jedi Order movie. If Disney's phasing away from doing streaming series, the problem is if Sam Jackson may want to come back to play Mace Windu, I don't know if there's enough pie for everybody.
I think there is. Here it is right here. This is how you bring Mace back. Skeleton Crew season 2. The kids encounter Mace in the bowels of Coruscant. They're looking for something.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't know what. I'm not a writer, so I don't know. But they encounter this old grizzled hermit who turns out to be Mace Windu.
Who turns out to be an actual Jedi who's not conning them.
Yeah. So maybe that's his thing too. Maybe it's, it would be his final act as a protector, protecting those kids from, I can't remember his name, from Jod. Yeah. So
that's an interesting idea. I like
Kathleen, if you're listening, write that down. That's a good one.
She listens, but Dave needs to produce it. But I know Dave listens every week. If we had a phone, he would call in. I know he would. But yeah, that's the angle. The kids, but I don't know I don't know like the premise though. It's just, But
again,
that's how you bring.
We've had big budget projects, for streaming shows that when the fan base, when certain pockets of the internet turned on them, the problem is it spoils the pie for everybody. Now they're afraid to invest in an idea like that because if it doesn't turn a profit, so the numbers are already crunching for this new Superman movie. Blow my mind on what they think it's going to take. They think it's going to take like $1 billion just to break even because of the production budget. I don't understand when sci-fi fans turned movie production budgets to box office profit. This is like FanDuel betting for nerds. I don't understand why all of a sudden people like us care if a movie goes over budget. If I enjoy the movie, I don't care. Spend all the money you want.
Right.
I will go, maybe make movies less expensive for me to go to, and I will go see a new Marvel movie, a new Star Wars movie 2-3 times in the theaters because it doesn't cost $20 a shot before popcorn and everything else. That's the problem, is that movies have become so expensive now on the production side and on the fan side that the stakes are so, it's impossible to be a success anymore because the game has been so overinflated that no one can keep up with it.
And there's too much competition. But like realistically, Disney, your big, I'm going to call it a big three, I guess, between Disney / ESPN / ABC / Hulu, Netflix and Amazon. Like between those three, there is enough content out there to cover most people's full entertainment needs.
Sure.
But it's not just that they're competing with each other. They're still competing with basic cable and all those other things too. And so, there's only so much possible time anybody can spend watching TV. We do this for the show. Honestly, outside of the episodes that I watch every week to get ready for this show, and obviously watching Andor when it came out and things like that. Right. But I can't tell you the last time I watched network television.
Oh, I haven't.
Because I don't have enough time in the day.
If I do anything, I'm streaming.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately the problem is it comes down to greed and profit. But there's too much. Grainy here had a good idea. How for like a short film? How do the regular people of Coruscant feel about this new empire just after the fall of the Republic? Maybe a short film of how the little guy feels and how small acts of kindness are being squashed. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. We see that a little bit here. We saw a little bit of that. We got a little bit of that in Andor, season 1 and 2. So that was nice. Maybe that could be something that the Skeleton Crew kids could experience because they've been living in this bubble, literally, their whole lives.
Right.
But I think right now we're in this weird place where there's too much content. At one point in Star Wars, we had to wait years and years for a new movie. I think it was 17, 18 years between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, or between Jedi and the Phantom Menace.
Oh yeah, the dark times we call it now. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think that a lot of the internet and the fandom, the younger fandom, understands that. Yeah, people say, "Well, we call it the dark times." Oh, it was so. There was a point where our generation, was told Star Wars was done.
Yeah,
and it was time to grow up. It was time to get into things, girls, and move on with our lives. And then the prequels came, and it was like, okay, cool, more Star Wars. And you think, okay, we got a couple. Again, there were a few years between movies. George was doing it all himself. It was like, okay, we're fine with Yeah, that was just again the beginning of the internet. Was the Phantom Menace was just being born, and now we're at that point where it's like, look, if you push Lucasfilm too hard, if you push Disney too hard and say that, oh, Star Wars sucks, there's nothing left to do, they will shut it down. Even if they'll move on to other things. That they got Marvel, they can do all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think this day and age, people complain there's too much Star Wars now, which I don't understand. You don't have to watch it all religiously.
Sure.
But it's this idea that, okay, getting a new Star Wars movie or a streaming series, which is basically a movie chopped up into low attention span bits,
yeah,
where you can watch it at your leisure on Disney Plus whenever you want. I'm like, please give me that. Give me a series, at least one series a year, maybe an animated series that runs a couple seasons. I'd love to keep this ball rolling because I have lived through a time where there was new Star Wars and it was time to pack up your toys and your comic books and move on. I'm not really looking forward to going back to that where it's like, oh, Star Wars is done. There's nothing new to move on.
Well, I think you can strike a balance. Like we had the EU, we got the novels, we got the comics. When there was nothing on, TV.
But there was a time there wasn't even that. After the droids and Ewok cartoons, I mean, it was done. There was a lot of books.
There was a lot of novelizations that came out. The EU was born during that time.
Yeah, about 93. It was about 10 years between Return of the Jedi and the Heir to the Empire, which is really the birth of the EU.
Yeah.
So that was a good 10 years, which for a kid or a 7-year-old, 10 years is you're an adult now.
Yes.
So it's there was a big gap of time where there was no new Star Wars. Unless you were really into the role-playing games and you had those sort guys, that's where all these little trivia things, fans like was it Captain Rex or Nick Sant, Andor. That's where a lot of Star Wars trivia was born because they had to invent content for the role-play games.
Right.
I know you guys have you have a little role-play game you guys work on, and you know how much story building and world building you got to do for that.
Right.
That was for a while, for a good 10 years, that's all there was for Star Wars, if that was what you were into. If not, it was just memorizing movie lines and keeping your action figures in mint condition.
Yeah. I mean, we were kings of trivia because we had nothing. Like, I am a king of original trilogy trivia, like, without question. But I think that's I am one of those people that will kind of low-key say there's too much Star Wars right now. Like, on one hand, I'm grateful for it. I love being able to sit down on my couch and I know something new is coming out pretty soon. I'm grateful for that. But at the same time, I don't feel as excited about Star Wars in that way, the way that I used to, because we had time to marinate. These stories, we had time to pick these stories apart and come up with our crazy theories and what's going to happen next. And, who's this guy and who's that gal and what planet is this? We had time to really, really digest this and break it all down, break it down to the atoms, like we did. But then when it was announced that something new was coming out, you're hyped, like you are excited. You get that feeling again. But now it's like we're getting so much Star Wars. Like every year we're getting something. And I don't want to say that it's too much because there's a little bit of something for everyone, which is great. There's something for the OT fans. There's something for the prequel fans and the sequel fans. And, there's something for everyone. And that's what I love about Star Wars. it's a big table. There's room for everybody at it. But I would just like maybe like 2 years, maybe 2 to 3 years where there's nothing. And then when they announce something, I'm like, yes, I'm going to camp out to get tickets and I'm going to see it first day. But when the sequels came out, I was like, I'll wait until like, the next weekend, not opening weekend. Wait, well, what would Granny say? The Star Wars series is more consumable than Marvel at the moment because you don't have to watch everything before it to learn to love the new stuff. And yeah, I could agree with that. You got to watch a lot of Marvel. Marvel is like so intertwined. You got to watch like a series. You've got to watch 3 movies. When oh my God, what was it? Echo. When Echo came out, I had to watch Hawkeye. I had to watch the Black Widow movie. I had to watch, I think, Endgame. Or one of them. I had to watch things so I could kind of like understand. I had to watch a little more Daredevil. So it's just like there's like so much. And Marvel's a job. Being a Marvel fan is a job, man. Like you could be a casual Star Wars fan, but you can't be a casual Marvel.
It is. I have said this frequently, and I will continue to say it. I love Marvel. I really do.
Yeah.
And Marvel has both a blessing and a curse. The fact that they got all the way from Iron Man 1 to Endgame with this massive overarching storyline that contained everything together was done damn near flawlessly. But it set an unrealistic expectation going forward that there's just it shouldn't have worked the first time and it's never going to work again.
Right.
Yeah, and there's the truth to that. I'm sort of, I guess I'm the oddball with going back to Star Wars, in that I more and more I love the original trilogy. I grew up with the original trilogy.
That's right.
But I think because it's become so ingrained in our culture. I mean, it's probably on TNT or TBS right now.
It's an institution.
It's an institution, and it's on basic cable, and it's an easy content filler for for network TV, basic cable TV. Any holiday, May 4th weekend or 4th of July weekend.
Star Wars will never die. It will never die.
But
never.
I find myself drawn more nowadays to the new. I've seen A New Hope. I've seen Jedi. I know Empire backwards and forwards. So when it comes on TV, I don't feel like I have to stop what I'm doing. But you tell me, like, Andor's dropping 3 episodes a week.
Yeah.
I'm there.
I'm watching it. Yeah.
I was there. Even the sequel trilogy, I was there. We're gonna get into Rebels someday. That show, when they were bouncing it around in different time slots before it was like, okay, that was must watch TV. Whenever you put it on, I'm there.
Yeah.
And so for me, because it's like we said, it's something new, it's something exciting, it's something I don't have memorized from start to finish.
Right.
I could be in the other room watching it with A New Hope on the TV, and I'll be,
word for word,
stay on target. I know every damn line in this movie, and after a while, it's like, okay, I know this thing backwards and forwards. I don't need to stop what I'm doing to watch it. It will always be there.
Well, and the new stuff gives us insight or connects those dots with some of the old stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is really nice because now we can plug these things into these gaps that we've had in our lore for so many years.
And a great example of that, even in this particular episode arc we were watching with the Lost Ones, the fight, Obi-Wan and Anakin show up to investigate and they look for this Valorum aid. Dooku goes there to silence him, and we get a pre-fight for what we we saw in Revenge of the Sith. It's like, oh, for this whole time we've been very careful. Obi-Wan and Grievous can fight, but Anakin can't fight Grievous, and Dooku. We've had a couple this was the trio fight that from Revenge of the Sith, the pre-show, and it was fantastic.
Can we on that note? Can we just talk for a moment about the absolute badassery of Count Dooku?
The big boys came to play in that episode.
Anakin's good. Mm-hmm. Anakin's very, very good. Dooku handled him like he was a youngling. He was unimpressed. He was unbothered, didn't break a sweat, handled Anakin and took it to him like a redheaded stepchild. It just dodging, like when he jumped over to that transport ship, Anakin was going at him hard, and Dooku was like, nope, I'm gonna dodge this. Nope, not gonna get me there. And he had one hand behind his back. He's like, meow, meow. And it's like, come on. Dooku's an asshole. Don't get me wrong. Yes, he is an asshole, but that was such a great fight.
And my favorite part was it was the birth of something that we'll see in Rebels. Kanan and Ezra sort of perfected what I call the Jedi tush push.
Yeah.
You jump this big gap. I will use the Force to propel you farther than you could on your own. Kanan and Ezra do this all the time, and they turn it into an art form. But I always loved this episode because this was like the birth of on screen, at least. I'm sure the Jedi train like for this kind of thing.
It was like, what is it? Colossus and Wolverine, their fastball special.
Yeah. But I remember as soon as he like tossed, used the Force to push it, I was like, it's the Jedi tush push.
And what was that cool move that they did where like Anakin and Obi-Wan like went back to back and did like this double Force push?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it knocked down all the pikes, and Dooku just like masterfully force parkoured out of the way. But that was new. That was like
it's very reminiscent of the witches from Acolyte, the Power of Two thing, where like you double your connection to the Force, and it just increases the energy of the blow. That was some expert fighting.
It was such an amazing fight scene.
And to me, the biggest thing about this scene is, you mentioned Dooku just handling Anakin, and he did. But more impressive than that is the fact that it wasn't just Anakin; it's also Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
And he knows both of them and knows their strengths and weaknesses to the point that he is pressing the attack on Anakin, knowing that Anakin is much better playing offense than defense, but doing just enough to make Obi-Wan have to play offense, which is not his strength.
Right. And Obi-Wan is also very, very good. And he kept both of them off balance. He is such a good swordsman.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's unfortunate that we lose Dooku in the way that we did. It is unfortunate. He was an artist. He was an artist.
I will say though, apparently he was not the best teacher, because if he had taught Qui-Gon how to use his lightsaber like that, we'd be looking at a whole different universe right now.
Well, but also Qui-Gon was of a different mindset. Qui-Gon was very much, he was a hippie. He was all about the living force, lovey-dovey.
And I know Tony probably don't know. We posted I found a great clip put on our Swarzy page. Somebody did an AI, what if Qui-Gon had survived the fight with Maul? And we were talking about the Duel of the Fates and how that, and it was just, first off, the narration on that was beautiful. But it was just this great idea that, Qui-Gon was if he'd have survived, the council might have listened to him.
Maybe.
They might have let him and Obi-Wan train Anakin together. It would have been a trio instead of a typical pairing. And it was just this this thought that, the what ifs had Qui-Gon survived that fight, it would have completely changed the way the story plays out.
Maybe.
Because he'd have listened. It was one of the things. He would have listened to senators that the rest would ignored, who probably knew about Palpatine's dealings. And I was just like, man, whoever did this, you are so on with that. If you're on our Swarzy page, check it out. That was we didn't make that video, but it's a damn good video.
It is. And the thing that intrigues me with it, and they didn't cover it directly, but it just plays into it. Yeah, there's a point in episode 2 where Dooku has Obi-Wan chained up, with the Force thing, and he's trying to tell him, hey, would you believe me if I told you that they were already under the control of the Sith?
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't Obi-Wan, if it was Qui-Gon in his stead for that scene, how does that conversation go?
Oh, Qui-Gon and Dooku in that situation?
Yeah. Where Dooku's like, telling his own Padawan, hey, like this is what's going on. But you know,
It would have been the same thing. It would have been the same thing.
I mean, we had that point from Tales of the Jedi where Dooku had that bit of a dark rage in him, and Qui-Gon had to pull him back.
Mhm.
Would this have been the same thing? Would Qui-Gon have been able to pull him back in and be like, okay, if that's true, well, then help us fight him?
He might have. And I think we saw in Tales Dooku's connection to Qui-Gon, even after he was killed, he was
hurt.
generally upset about that.
It hurt. That hurt. When he found out that Qui-Gon died, that he was hurt by that.
I think he really thought he was going to be able to maybe bring his former apprentice in. And now, not necessarily as a Sith acolyte, but maybe it's just as more muscle to the cause. That might be the politician Dooku going, hey, if we start winning over Jedi, maybe my side could win the war after all.
Qui-Gon wouldn't have gone, though. Qui-Gon would not have gone with
I don't think he would have, but I think Dooku would have tried to lure him, saying,
Sure.
hey, team, kind of like Vader does to Luke on the best, join me and together we'll end this conflict.
Right. And that's and I don't think that Qui-Gon would have won Dooku over. Once Palpatine's got a hold of you, that's it. You're done. It's a wrap. No one's coming back from that. Only Anakin did, and that's, finally his conscience was catching up to him, and that's just the story arc. But I don't think there's anything that Qui-Gon could have said to Dooku had his roles, had he been there instead of Obi-Wan. I don't think there's anything that could have pulled him away from. Yaddle tried. Yaddle put up a really good argument to try to get Dooku to come back. Mm-hmm. And you could see the conflict in Dooku. Palpatine, I think, even mentioned the conflict. So it's there. He still has the light side somewhere in his chest, but he's just he's so far gone, and he's so manipulated by Palpatine, because Palpatine is really good at taking, Dooku knew that the Republic was fucked. He knew that the Jedi Order was fucked. You needed reform across the board. Dooku knew that, but Palpatine used that. That was his in, and twisted that. I think Dooku had a lot of really, really good ideas, but that was Palpatine's in, and Palpatine twisted those good ideas and turned them into.
I agree. I guess my question is, yes, Dooku very much struggled within himself, dealing with Yaddle, because he didn't really want to kill her.
No.
But if it's Qui-Gon, is it even much more of a struggle? He knows Yaddle's a good person. He knows
Yaddle's a colleague, Qui-Gon's a son.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference.
But I think
if it's Qui-Gon there, I don't know.
I think Dooku, if Palpatine said that Qui-Gon has to die by your hand, I think Dooku would have done it. I don't think that Dooku would have turned on Palpatine. I think that he would have done it, and I think Qui-Gon would have let him do it. I think it would have been very much like A New Hope, Obi-Wan and Vader. I think he would have allowed it to happen. Because I think that would have hurt him more. If Qui-Gon were to fight back against Dooku, then he's going to get killed in the battle, because Dooku is a far superior swordsman.
And Dooku would see that as a betrayal, not I'm the bad guy.
Right. But if Qui-Gon just held up his saber and let Dooku cut him down, that's going to weigh heavy on Dooku. But that sorrow would just push him further into the dark side. So
I suppose that's fair. I guess, I don't know. I mean, because I keep thinking back to when he was told to lose Asajj.
Yeah.
And he really didn't want to. And even when he did, he only tried to kill her after she came back with Maul's brother, who I'm trying to
Savage.
Yeah. They tag team.
Prior to that, he was like, I'm not going to help you, and if you die, you die, but I'm not going to kill you myself.
But if he would have got pressed, I think he would have. If Palpatine said, yo, my guy, you need to go ahead and take her out.
Yeah.
Yes, my master. And it would have been done. And that would have been the end of it. Because because it's all about agenda, and Palpatine is the master of manipulating people's agendas. He's going to find an agenda that aligns with him, and he's going to twist your agenda to meet his. And we see it. I mean, we see it time and time again. And Dooku is one of his victims. True. Unfortunately, I think had Dooku not been under the influence of Palpatine, but would have been like a leader of the Separatists, I think that the conflict would have ended somewhat peacefully. But then you would have had the Galactic Republic and, the Confederated, systems, and they would have figured out a way to peacefully coexist. But, that shit didn't happen because we've got Palpatine over there.
The whole war was intended by Palpatine to cause the friction. It wasn't.
Yeah.
There wasn't the means to an end. It was just. It was all show.
Yeah, I mean, it was. You talk about political theater. Whew. Yeah. So I had like a bunch more questions that I wanted to talk about. We did touch on Cypher Diaz a little bit.
What do you got?
Oh,
what's your favorite? Hit us with one.
Okay, so parallels to Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Yes.
The greatest Indiana Jones film is the Temple of Doom. I'll fight you in the street if you disagree. It is the best of the franchise, the absolute best. Molderom, and it's funny because there are like when we first get taken underground and you see like the setup that they have over the lava, instantly Temple of Doom, but then even the Queen, she, everyone had like, this subcontinent type accent. They all had like this Indian type of accent, just like in Temple of Doom. And at one point they had the cages, that people were put in. They were sacrificing. Instead of pulling your heart out, they're pulling the force out of you. And I love it when the writers are super nerdy like that. And they're like, let's do a Temple of Doom episode. Let's do it. And let's have Jar Jar in it. And let's get Jar Jar laid while we're doing it.
And let's bring in Mother Talzin as the priestess of this cult. So,
Yeah.
She just had her coven wiped out by the separatists, and she's still trying to be a player in the galaxy.
She almost made it. What did she die, or did she just dip out?
I think she dipped out. She
didn't die, right? I mean,
as soon as the ceremony was interrupted, it's like peace out.
Like
on to the next scheme.
When she was standing there holding the broken globe, and she just was like, dropped it. That look, I was like, okay, I feel that. I'm sorry, Mother Townsend, that you had to go through that. But it was interesting seeing the Force in this way, and they kept reinforcing the fact that, this isn't Jedi, this isn't Sith, this is a different way to experience the Force. And then Mama is coming in trying to take that away so she could be like the Force being.
I blame you for this. Now I have this image in my head of Short Round going, Dr. Jones, and Jar Jar going, Master and Mace.
He really, Mace, again, he's the action star. He's the Bing Crosby, and Jar Jar was the Bob Hope. Short Round, where like he's the goofy sidekick who gets the girl.
Yeah,
but, Mace is the one doing all the serious action fighting.
He did the heavy lifting.
And Jar Jar gets the girl at the end. It was great.
And I have to say that there, when Jar Jar like rushed that E-Web cannon, like, man, go ahead. That was stupid. But you know what, my guy, you just showed off some serious Gungan orbs because damn. And he's lucky that Mace was there. But again, was it luck or was it him as Darth Binks utilizing the dark side of the Force to line everything up just so? He's the real string puller. It's not Palpatine. We give Palpatine all this credit. It's Jar Jar. Jar Jar's doing it.
And we would have found out in Acolyte Season 2.
I know, right?
Well, I mean, it's fun. It's fun to joke about, Jar Jar being a secret Sith Lord, but it's just kind of like, it's great to see a character that was so maligned, so ridiculed
Yeah.
in a bad way,
Yeah.
for so long. And like I said, Ahmed Best coming back to voice the role and doing, the mocap for the moves. I mean, it's just great seeing him finally getting the credit he deserves.
And then seeing him as a Jedi.
Yeah.
As well. I'm
still lobbying for Caloran Beck, his friend, that when he takes Grogu to safety with those guys that were wearing Naboo armor. Like, Kathleen, if you're listening, I will pay serious money for a Caloran Beck Jar Jar spin, like just a quick scene. It could be in anything you want. I want to see them hand off Grogu, and the idea that Jar Jar was protecting a child Jedi. I'm just like, do it.
You know what? That is such a, that's beautiful, man. Because the way that we know Jar Jar ends up is not a dignified way for this hero of the Republic to go out as a homeless street performer. No, but to be the guardian of the next generation of Jedi Knights.
Even if something goes wrong later on, just the idea that, he was still trying, even as the Empire was starting to take hold, the goodness of Jar Jar Binks was trying to break through.
And if you think about it, there is probably nowhere safer in the galaxy than with Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah.
Nothing bad happens to people around Jar Jar. Bad things happen to Jar Jar.
Bad things happen to bad guys around Jar Jar.
But really bad things happen to bad guys around Jar Jar. The worst thing that ever happened to Jar Jar was he got his tongue stuck in the energy bindings. That was it.
Hang on. There's one qualifier for this.
Okay.
If you're a Gungan around Jar Jar, you're fucked.
If you're the boss. If you're... Yeah.
Well played. Okay.
If you are not a Gungan around him, you're good.
Yeah. Because, you're going to get your head liver smashed, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what he said. Smash the boss's head liver. So I really hope, and I think that's such a good idea, Crash, is to have Jar Jar being handed Grogu by Ahmed Best. Like, it would be such a meta scene, but it would be so cool. And I think it would be a great way to bring Jar Jar's character full circle. And it would really be a victory for Ahmed.
Oh man.
Because he went through some shit. He went through a lot of shit. Yeah. We talk about the fandom menace and the evil theorists out there, but these people existed long before the internet. The fandom menace was around when the special editions came out. I mean, they were there foaming at the mouth. This is not my Star Wars. How dare Han Solo not shoot first? I mean, it was like, it was crazy. So these people have always been there.
You just weren't exposed to them from all over the world. You just had whatever small pocket of idiots lived in your area.
Right.
Like I was saying, one week, I'm at Motor City Con, and there's a guy behind me in line who would not shut up about Kathleen Kennedy. And I was like, it got to the point where and he just wanted to talk. He wanted someone to talk to, and I'm just trying to ignore it. And at the end, I was like, Kathleen Kennedy's my godmother, you idiot. Just to get off his game. Because he was just spouting off all the talking points. We hear him over and over, bad writing, blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, shut up.
Just show me on the doll where Kathleen Kennedy hurts you.
Exactly. Oh, and by the way, happy birthday, Kathleen, this week.
Happy birthday, Kathleen. Thank you.
And while we're on the subject, I know it's not officially up, but there are stories coming out that Kathleen's about to be replaced as the head of the studio by Filoni and Carrie Beck. Which, listen, I like Kathleen. I understand that there have been some
misses.
Some misses, some flops here and there. But hopefully, as time goes by, we'll see the same thing that we've seen with Hayden Christensen and with Ahmed Best and some of these others, where when they're not in the spotlight anymore, as time goes by, we will remember them more kindly.
Well, and look at, I mean, we can't go wrong with Dave at the helm. We just can't, but
I don't know if he can handle I don't know if he's ready to handle the business side of movie making, though. He's a creative type. He's a great creative type. And my problem, I don't know much about Carrie Beck, I believe her name is, but I'm hoping they have somebody who can deal with the.
Carrie will handle all that.
Okay, but because my opinion of Tony Gilroy is slowly diminishing, just because he's taking a lot of credit for how good Andor is, and even gave Kathleen Kennedy credit for giving him whatever he wanted. But that's like the kid that has the unlimited allowance, trying to say, "Well, I'm humble. I created this show, but I'm." There are a lot better directors in Star Wars who have worked with far less resources and have put out good content.
Can we just look at Empire Strikes Back, which has always kind of been heralded as peak Star Wars, like the best of the original trilogy, and that was done on a post New Hope budget, and that was Kirshner, right? He directed. Yeah. So he was working with. He had a little bit of extra budget, of course, but, and they already had done the groundwork with ILM and, so he was in a good spot, but still, he was still doing more with less, compared to what we see now. But, anytime someone wants to bag on Kathleen Kennedy, like you had said, yeah, there's been some losses, but look at her record. Look at the wins. Look at her KD. Look at her kill death ratio.
That resume is GOAT status. I mean, she's been around legends, Spielberg. And not just some coffee girl. I know that Leslie Headland from Accolade, again, my buddy from the line at Motor City, she was just a coffee girl. She didn't earn this. It's always amazing to me that the women in the film industry, as someone who worked in the TV production industry, I've heard this narrative before, that the women behind the scenes don't earn their position like men do. And that's always bugged me, because I've worked with some very talented women. And especially women behind the scenes in the business side that are way smarter than I am. And
it's an age-old argument. It's an age-old argument. And I think that in this industry, you're not getting a job, especially like a high-profile job like a Star Wars project, without some kind of merit. You've paid some dues in order to get a Star Wars project. And there's things about Star Wars that we don't like, of course, but I'm not going to complain about it outside of this type of forum, because I couldn't do better. I couldn't make my own like generation spanning, iconic franchise. I couldn't do that, so like for all the complainers, then do better. Just do better. Make your own shit. If you want to be this theorist, make your own shit and make it good, because there was a specific theorist who did make his own shit and it was trash, and I guess they're making more shit and it's going to be trash as well. But that's the thing. You don't know, unless you've sat in a room with George and Dave and John and Kathleen and all of them, you don't know.
I never heard of Dave Filoni until George brought him in on Clone Wars, just since then, reading some, hearing what he did on Last Airbender and some other, there are a lot of people out there, earning their keep, making a name for themselves, who deserve a shot in a big franchise like Star Wars. And if they get the right person, everybody, when people like Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, Deborah Chow, they all say the same thing. Ron Howard even says this at MegaCon. Kathleen Kennedy gives creative people the tools they need, and then lets them do their thing. It's not a very, there are other models where the studio tells you, we want X, Y, Z because we want to appeal to that demographic and that demographic, and make sure it's a hot chick and lots of explosions and stuff like that. And most of those movies end up looking like trash anyways. Sure. I'm not going to do names. Rebel.
But you do, like you said, you look at like the job of a producer, executive producer, cannot be easy, and you've got people above you, that are barking at you about budget and time constraints, and then so that all rolls downhill in the industry. But again, I just have to say, if you look at Kathleen's, like you said, it's a goated list. She is responsible for literally the biggest film franchises in the history of humanity. Period. Full stop. I mean, you cannot argue that. And she wasn't just a one-hit wonder. Some people make like this great blockbuster movie, you never hear from them again. But Kathleen, it's like one after another, franchise after franchise after franchise, billions upon billions upon billions of dollars made. She knows what she's doing. Yes, there's some flops, of course. There's always going to be. You can't go 100%. You just can't. It's unrealistic. But if we're talking percentages,
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into this mindset that people get into, and definitely some of this is just sexism or whatever other ism that you want to throw at it, depending on who it is we're talking about.
Oh yeah.
But I think a part of this is that people don't understand it. It's not the same business it was. Like, I remember, and this was a little bit even before my time, but a lot of the criticism towards Sofia Coppola, because she only got those jobs because of her father, and yes, especially in old school Hollywood, there was a lot of nepotism. There was a lot of people just getting a job because of who you knew. But nowadays, again, there's too much competition for that. If you're not good at what you do, you don't get to that rank.
Right. Exactly. Like I just pulled up her filmography as executive producer. Out of the gate with Gremlins. Come on. Gremlins, The Goonies, Back to the Future, An American Tail, Batteries Not Included, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Back to the Future Part 2, Joe versus the Volcano. Okay, that's one. It's not great. It's fun. It's a fun movie. Yeah. Gremlins 2, American Tail, 5 Goes West. That was fucking huge. That was huge.
That was one of my favorite movies as a kid.
Right. Yes. Cape Fear, great movie. Schindler's List, The Flintstones. We'll let that one slide. We'll let her slide on that one.
Yeah.
The Jurassic Park films, the Indiana Jones films. I mean, I'm just Star Wars, Poltergeist. It's just hit after hit, Land Before Time, hit after hit after hit. And then looking at her television producer credits, it's all Star Wars. The only flop that I see on here really was Willow.
The sequel, not the original.
The series. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it was okay. But everything else, Mandalorian, Book of Boba, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Andor, Skeleton Crew, The Acolyte, Ahsoka, all great shows. Yes, including The Acolyte. So.
And the Phantom Menace is going to, when she finally does decide to retire, step down, whatever you call it, the Phantom Menace is going to cheer and pretend they manifested this from their mom's basement. But the truth is, she has had such a prolific career. This is like my Steelers fans kicking in. They just signed Aaron Rodgers, and I'm going, please retire. His time is over. Kathleen Kennedy is at that point in her career life. She can step down and walk off into the sunset whenever she feels like.
Head held high,
goat career, and that's fine. And as long and you get to pick your successor and carry on the tradition. This was not the fans chased out the inept woman from Lucas. Kathleen Kennedy is a badass.
She is. Oh, The Color Purple, E.T., Arachnophobia. So without Kathleen Kennedy, and I don't care what you have to say about her and how she ruined your childhood because of Star Wars or whatever. Without Kathleen Kennedy, we would not have the nerd culture that we have today. It would not exist without Kathleen Kennedy. Prove me wrong. We have people out there in the comments. Prove me wrong. Please, without Kathleen Kennedy, there would be no nerd culture, because all of this exploded in the 80s and 90s, and that's where we get our current nerd culture from. She built the foundation, she built the house, she furnished the house, she sold that house and purchased a bigger house, filled that up with new furniture. I mean, she just kept winning, except for Indiana Jones and the King of the Crystal Skull. But she just kept winning. Again, if we were to like total all this up and create her win-loss ratio, way more wins. Twister's on here, Congo's on here.
Oh,
the bridges
and just like, people don't give Lucas enough credit. They say he wasn't a great director. May not have been a great director, but he was innovative in the technology. The movies we see today are made the way they are. There's people arguing about Doctor Who series. They use some CG nowadays for TV level effects.
Yeah,
and there's people arguing that the old rubber suit monsters look better, and I just laugh. Well, to a degree, because there's just certain, like, you couldn't do a Jar Jar Binks rubber suit, Ahmed Best with a head on top.
Yeah, no.
If that was good for like actor sight lines, but after
you'd have to get like a 7 foot tall dude, in the rubber suit in order to do that.
I mean, even with the Wookiees in Revenge of the Sith, they made a Wookiee. They had to get basketball players to fill in those suits.
Right.
Fun fact: most of the Chewbacca's you see at Comic-Cons aren't wearing drywall stilts, because most of them are 5'11" and they're not the size of Chewbacca.
And you can always tell too, like, people that are in Chewbacca's, because they never extend the arms. Like, I've seen some that have the little finger extenders, where you can extend, but they'll have that, like, what is it, 7'2" height, but their arms are like super short. What Granny said, she made the Star Wars we know today. Kathleen Kennedy did,
right,
and she's absolutely right. And Crash, to your credit, which you said, George is not the best director in the world, but he is a next level storyteller and world builder. He's a next level visionary. He's got the imagination of a kid who never grew up, and because of his need to innovate, like you said, look at the film industry now. Every special effects movie you see, somewhere in the credits is either ILM or Skywalker sound.
Exactly.
Everybody uses it.
And even the competition that sprung up from around him, most of those guys came from ILM, and like Dykstra built the rigs for the motion capture cameras, and then went off and did his own thing.
I think a bunch of them went to Pixar too, didn't they?
Yeah.
Well, off and go to Pixar. So
that was part of the Lucas investing originally in Pixar and digital graphics and digital editing. That ILM documentary on Disney Plus is just like,
I love it.
Required watching for anybody that loves movies.
Absolutely. And there's like a season 2.
Yeah.
I haven't watched season 2. I've seen season 1, but
you should. I watched season 2. It's they just celebrated their 50th anniversary, because again, ILM was built to make Star Wars,
right?
And since then, they've been making the technology that everybody uses.
So
anybody that says, "Oh, this movie's better than Star Wars," yeah, but George Lucas made it possible, and you just don't want to admit it, because that would make you'd have to admit that George Lucas was a genius in his own way.
And you can say that this movie is better than Star Wars, but I promise you, when they roll credits, you're going to see George Lucas's fingerprints all over it. Mm-hmm. So your quote unquote better than Star Wars movie wouldn't exist without Grandpa George. Period. And the success of Star Wars right now is due to Kathleen Kennedy and Dave Filoni. Dave Filoni, in my opinion, brought Star Wars back from the brink. Like, I will go to my grave saying that Star Wars won't ever die, because it's an institution. It's like Saturday Night Live. No matter how shitty a season might be or a cast, that show will not go away. It is an American television institution. Star Wars is an American franchise institution. It's not going anywhere, no matter how bad it gets. But At one point, we weren't getting a lot of Star Wars. We weren't getting a lot of good Star Wars, the stuff that we were getting. And then Dave comes out of nowhere with the fucking Clone Wars. And really, breathed new life into it and saved it. Dave Filoni saved Star Wars with his animation and his vision and his love of it, because he's a fucking fan. We've seen what those roundtable discussions, with all the directors from The Mandalorian. They're fans.
Oh yeah,
they're us. Like, we could sit and chill and talk to them about all this stuff. Filoni would spank us because he's just like ridiculously knowledgeable, but I think that even Steve Sansweet can't hang with Dave, and Steve Sansweet is like the guy who's got he has the collection, and he knows so much about Star Wars. Leland Chee, the official keeper of the holocron. I think Dave would out trivia Leland Chee. He's just that good. Dave Filoni is run for president of the United States. I'm putting my endorsement in for him right now.
No. See, if he does that, then he can't keep his job at Disney.
All right. Touche. You are correct, sir. I take it back. All right. He just needs to stay making Star Wars and some other shit too. I would love to see more Avatar stuff, because Avatar was good. The Legend of Korra was good. So I'd like to see some more stuff. That's a wrap. We've gone over a little bit.
That's okay.
A little bit. That's fine.
I think we covered some stuff though. All right, so next week, homework, episodes 11 through 13, and that's going to wrap up season 6 of the Clone Wars. And we've still got a few more episodes in our season, so we'll figure that out. We'll probably be doing some trivia. Maybe we can get some guests on. I don't know. Maybe it'll just be us brushing our cats or something. I don't know, but we'll figure it out.
Hey, don't forget, if you're listening to this, check us out on Facebook. We have our Facebook page. We have our Swarzy Curious group. It's a little invite only. Answer the membership questions. We get a little more in depth. A little more. There'll be some. We may reference some things we talk about in this episode that we can't say out in the open. More of our opinions on some of these things in general Star Wars verse.
But you're among friends.
But that's the beauty of this page, this podcast, is that for people that love Star Wars, this is your safe space. I mean, it's not I'm on Facebook all the time telling people our slogan is that we love Star Wars even when we don't always like it, and I think that's a great way to be a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, and we're not gonna poop on you because you have a difference of opinion. We could
maybe nicer about it. That's it's amazing how hard that has become lately. It's just be nice. Even if you disagree with somebody, you don't have to start with the name calling. You don't have to start with the insult. It's just okay, you like Karen Traviss and I don't. That's it.
Right. And we're gonna end up fighting in the parking lot over that. but that's the thing though. It's like, I love Karen Traviss. She is the mother of Mandalore. You don't like Karen Traviss, and that's okay. It's okay.
I think she's a great writer. I just don't know if she's a great Star Wars writer, and we've had that conversation before.
She is a great Star Wars writer, but
for Mandos,
yes,
not the entire universe, but
there's nothing more important than a Mandalorian in the Star Wars universe. Without a Mandalorian, there would be no Star Wars universe.
Oh, okay, that's how it is. Okay,
I mean that's pushing a little bit, but that's the thing. I'm not gonna just because you and I disagree about Karen Traviss and her place in the Star Wars universe. We're not going to call each other lesser fans. You're not a real fan because you don't like the Mandalorian books, or
I had somebody ask me on another page I was exploring as our Safe Space account, and they said, "Well, what would you do if Lucas decided to recanonize the old EU?" I said, "Read both." You weren't expecting that, were you? I enjoyed the EU. I understand why they had to reset the timeline to give people more creative freedom to work, or it's very tough to hit all the little dots in the there was so much lore built up.
Oh, it's a lot. To
say, okay, I'm making a new Star Wars movie, but it's got to be accurate to this book, this comic, this video game.
Right.
I understand why they had to do that, but I can enjoy both the Legends and the current canon equally, just because I love Star Wars.
I would like them to revisit some things. I think you're not going to like this, Crash, but I think we could recanonize the Karen Traviss books because there's a lot of good stuff in there that does kind of line up with Order 66, and they were and there's good stuff in there about the Kaminoans and about the rapid aging and all of this stuff. So I think there's a place for that. I think Bad Batch tried to kind of fill that gap, because Bad Batch was very much like Omega Squad from the Mandalorian books.
I only made it through the first book, and I was turned off more on, again, the Jedi that was paired up with it. I was like, this is almost like a cliche parody of what a Jedi. I was like, okay, you want to do a clone story? Do a clone story. Just don't wreck Jedi. You're not good at it.
Well, but I mean, there was more to it than that. I mean, there was.
I might have to give it. Here we go. Mark this tape. Mark this part of the tape.
Okay.
I may have to revisit the Karen Traviss books with new eyes.
Do it. Republic Commando books, and then Imperial Commando, and it's revisit it with new eyes and try to plug it in, because we're still actually a little bit ways off. But once we hit Order 66, maybe dive into the first book again, Hard Contact. Mm-hmm. Or if you've or play Republic Commando. Do you have an Xbox?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I think Republic Commando's on Xbox for free if you have Game Pass. So play Republic Commando again. Have you ever played it?
I was more of a Halo guy, but I think we did play. A friend of mine, we used to go over to his place, do game nights, and we did a Republic Commando a couple times. Okay,
but I think if you play Republic Commando now, you'll have more of an appreciation for it, especially since now we've seen Commandos briefly in the Clone Wars. We really only get to know Gregor, but we do see, and it was so cool to see, we do see the Republic Commando squad from the game in the Clone Wars. So we got to see, I think it was Sev. But yeah, the Republic Commandos from the game do make it into the show. So obviously somebody's a fan. And I think Bad Batch was supposed to be, that
the bridge to that.
Yeah, I think so. But read the books, check them out. Hard Contact is the first one. And the thing with that young Jedi, it makes sense. I mean, there's a whole thing. There's a whole thing with her and one of the commandos, and it's a roller coaster ride, and it's great. And it's the reason that I fell in love with Mandalorian culture, because she invented it. She invented Mandalorian culture with George's blessing, of course, but all we got from George was that, oh yeah, Boba Fett was wearing Mandalorian armor, but he might not be a Mandalorian. I never said he was a Mandalorian. I just said he's wearing Mandalorian armor. So yeah, Karen Traviss, love her or hate her, she is the mother of Mandalore. And I would say Dave has now become like the uncle. He's the uncle of Mandalore, because he's and I got a new Mandalorian tattoo. You're not gonna be able to see it very well on camera, but
you should post that picture you sent us and your other one. You should put those on Swarzy or something so people can see your new ink.
Mando strong, and I've got Ula on my arm. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but there you go. Here, check it out. Nice. Ula. It says ooh la la, Ula. Get it? Okay. Anyway, so that's it. We're gonna wrap it up. We've gone way over time.
Merch.
But it's been a good show. I love it. I love we're supposed to be talking about like in-universe stuff. We're not supposed to be talking about like the Karen Traviss stuff and the Kathleen Kennedy stuff. You know what?
You think we're getting meta now? Wait till we do the preview for next season. This is just us.
Yeah, we're just spitballing.
We only watched 3 episodes, guys. Each episode is about 24 minutes. So, I mean, unless we went line for line over the entire 3 episodes, what else were we going to talk about?
There's 3 questions. We didn't talk about Mother Townsend. I had stuff about that. We didn't really touch on, there was more we could have talked about with Cypher Diaz, more about Yoda's suspicion and cover up. So yeah, there's always
we can dabble in some of that next week, because we're going to recap this season, and we'll cover some of that.
We are. So that's our season.
This lovely URL. What does this do?
Oh, well, for all of our listeners, that can't see it, circleofnerds.com/merch. You can go over there and get some cool Swarzy Curious gear. We've got our Circle of Nerds gear. We've got our Star Wars SafeSpace gear. So head on over there, grab you a t-shirt or a hoodie. Stay away from the hats. I don't think we have hats up there. Their hats are trash. But t-shirts and hoodies are pretty good. Tony is looking very business smart, business casual, wearing the cool Circle of Nerds polo, looking like the fucking CEO of the company. I love it. That's looking good.
Don't have my mug yet, but it's coming.
Yeah, we got to get. I think there's the camping mugs on there. I don't know if we have like the proper mugs.
I've got one on the way.
Do you really?
Yes, I do.
I keep buying hoodies from our store because I keep losing them. I like every 6 months to a year, I'll lose my Circle of Nerds hoodie and I'll have to buy a new one. So I feel like all the money that's going in there is from us. I don't think anybody else ever buys any of our stuff. Like it's just. I haven't even checked the account because I don't really get the alerts for it anymore. So I don't know. There's probably like $50 sitting in the account or something.
This is what I'm gonna say that we made it is when we go to a con somewhere and I see somebody wearing some of our gear, be like, yes.
Yeah. So if we go to a con and if you're wearing anything Circle of Nerds or Star Wars SafeSpace related, we're gonna give you $100.
That's coming out of your account, brother.
Yeah, it's coming out of my account. But that's only for one person. Like one person. The first person I see, I'm going to hand you a crisp new $100 bill.
You're going to be like Bob Barker when they got the bid actually, right? Like, oh, yeah, reach into my pocket.
Reach into my pocket. No, we can't do that. Our society's too litigious. I'm not trying to have anybody stick their hand in my pocket and then I get hemmed up for something I didn't do. Or maybe they do something to me that I didn't want them to do. You can't have strangers reach in for candy anymore. That shit just doesn't work. The good old days, though, you could. I got candy in my pocket, little boy. Come check it. Oh, thanks, Grandpa. All right. Anyway,
and we've been demonetized. Damn it!
I don't think we've been monetized yet. We've been demonetized before we even got monetized. Right. CircleNerds.com/merch. Head on over, and you can, of course, find us on all of the social media that we don't really post to, except for Facebook. At the SWS show on all platforms. I promise one of these days I'm going to get back in the swing of things with our socials, especially TikTok. Yes,
those questions that we didn't answer, post them on there.
That's a great idea. Going. That's a great idea.
There you go.
All right. See, okay. You're hired. All right. All right.
We're a little punchy because this is our second show this week. We did one Monday to cover last week, so we're running on fumes.
We are, and I haven't slept. So like I was up all last night, working on this RPG that Tony and I and a few other people are playing, and then I had to work today, so I was at work all day, and then I didn't have time. I was gonna take a nap before the show, but I just didn't have time. So I think I'm running on, I don't know, like close to 30 hours. So I'm pinging. I'm having a good time. Anyway, let's wrap this turkey up because Tony and I still have some character building to do, don't we?
We do, though. Now that you've mentioned, like, if you need to get some sleep, we can get some sleep, and we can figure out another time. It's not
I'm
not
wired
that
now. I was a little sleepy before we started the show, but I'm wired up. I'm good. I'm good to go now.
Cool.
But let's wrap things up. But we've got it's crazy because we have 3 viewers right now. That's the most we've had like all episode, the entire episode, and they come on at the end. Appreciate you. So you're gonna get the merch. You're gonna check us out. You're gonna do the homework. Remember, season 6, episodes 11 through 13. We already talked about merch. Talked about that. Yeah. So
crazy.
So we're thank you for joining us. Of course, for our 3 viewers and however many listeners we have, you really could be doing anything else right now, but you chose to spend your time with us, and we do appreciate that. And of course, a very special thanks and appreciation to all of our active duty service members and veterans out there for your continued service and sacrifice, especially during these weird, trying times. Tip of the hat to you. Thank you so much for your service. We do appreciate you. And with that, we're going to get out of here. You guys have anything on the way out?
Just some stuff for us once we're off air, but yeah, I'm good.
All right, cool. Just remember, speaking of Bob Barker, don't forget spay and neuter your pets. If you do that, if you're a
Have your wildcat spayed or neutered.
Have your wildcats spayed or neutered, or both, if they're feeling that way. All right, so that's gonna do it. Yeah, I feel like there's something else, but that's because I'm all amped up. So anyway, that's gonna do it for us. Check us out again next week, same bat time, same bat channel. And as always, if no one does anything nice for you, do something nice to yourself. And we are gonna see y'all next week. We have a comment. And it's Granny saying goodbye. Goodbye, Granny. She is our super fan, coming in hot every single week. Thank you very much, Granny. Man, I hope I'm saying her name right or their name right. I don't even know. Granny sounds like, I don't know. I'm just going to wrap it up. I'll just do that. That's it.
Good idea. Good night, boys.
All right. Say goodnight, Gracie.
Good night, Gracie.
Good night, Gracie.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, wait, no. There it is. Bye.